Ittoki Sakuraba is an ordinary boy, but after surviving a surprise attack, he finds out that he is the heir of an ancient ninja family that is under attack and his life changes completely. The story begins with Ittoki having his normal teenager life, or at least almost, since it was all about school and courses, and thanks to his busy schedule he didn't even have time to hang out with his friends. To make matters worse, he was constantly watched by his friend Kusetsu, who followed him everywhere at his mother's request, to make sure he didn't skip class. Meanwhile, his uncle Tokisada is in trouble with a client at his workplace and is scolded by his colleagues, until Ittoki's mother Yumika arrives and stops the trouble. And guys, help us grow our channel by hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel. We have a lot more exciting content coming up that you don't want to miss. So give it a thumbs up so we can beat the goal of 153 likes on this video. And now let's go. Ittoki goes on with his life as a student until he receives a letter from a girl named Tsubaki, who has been watching him for some time. She explains that she saw what a kind and hard-working boy he was and that she began to like him and asked him to be her boyfriend. At night he comes home all happy that finally his teenage life is about to begin and tries to invent an excuse for his mother to let him go out on Sunday, but she realizes that there was a girl involved and starts asking how she is, wanting to know more about her son's girlfriend. But he explains that he had just met her and so he didn't know much about her. At the same time his mother changes, saying that she doesn't allow him to date someone he has just met. Ittoki doesn't like having his whole life controlled, so when Sunday arrives, with the help of his uncle, Ittoki manages to meet with Tsubaki. As soon as she arrives at the meeting, she suggests they go to her house. In her room, Ittoki is super nervous about the situation, and it doesn't take long for Tsubaki to take off her clothes, making her intention clear and throwing on all her charm. However, he literally throws the girl aside, saying that it was wrong because they barely knew each other. He even jokes that she must have been playing a prank on him by asking if there was someone hiding under the bed. To his surprise, there was indeed something under the bed. Suddenly the room is invaded by several ninjas. The girl had called him into a trap. Without understanding anything of what was happening, Kusetsu appears and throws him out of the window to get him out of the confusion. Suddenly he is inside a fleeing car together with his mother's employees, Kozo and Raya, but they are cornered and ask Ittoki to run away, trying to stay as close to people as possible. However, at night he gets lost and ends up on a completely empty street. To make matters worse, the place suddenly suffers a blackout. Luckily he meets a policeman and asks for his help, but the policeman doesn't last long, because one of the ninjas soon appears and eliminates him. Surrounded, Ittoki fears for his life when Tokisada appears and saves him. After all this confusion, it is finally time for Ittoki to get his answers. Together with Kusetsu and his uncle, Ittoki arrives at an unknown place that Tokisada explains is his family's home. Inside he discovers the truth. His family was a group of shinobi from the Iga village that his mother led. She explains that ninjas have existed for hundreds of years, and there were some in villages around the country, where the members live with their normal jobs in order to infiltrate society. One of the groups of ninjas, the Koga village, which has more wealth and advanced technologies, was trying to take over Iga village and so had attacked him, the 19th successor to the leadership of Iga village. With this he parachuted into the ninja world, and his only options were to die for Koga village or take over his family's legacy. However, Tokisada drags him out of the meeting and explains that he had a third option: to disappear from the scene. He says that he and Yumika were aware that it was unfair to force him into this world, so they devised a plan that would give Ittoki the chance to escape and make a new life far away. Tokisada explains that Ittoki's father was the leader, but since he was eliminated when Ittoki, the true heir, was very young, his mother also parachuted into the world of ninjas and had to assume leadership, and since she knew what it was like to enter this life, she wanted to give her son the choice to run away, but Ittoki didn't think this option was fair to his mother, since it would leave her alone in this responsibility that was his, and decides that he will become a ninja. Meanwhile, in Koga village, the new chief Kito vows to avenge the elimination of the old chief by defeating Iga village. The next day Raya tells Ittoki about a school for ninjas, which he must attend because besides teaching him everything he needs to know, it would be safer than his normal school cause it is run by the CNMSN, an organization responsible for preventing conflicts between villages. However, to enter he would have to complete a test. Meanwhile, the village of Iga was being forced to pass its business to the village of Koga, as a way to weaken Iga. Kozo questions whether this violated the rules, but Hausen, a Koga's ninja, assures him that CNMSN was aware and that this violates no rules, leaving Yumika with no choice but to accept. At night during dinner, Ittoki comments to his mother that he was worried about him becoming a ninja, as he imagines his father was eliminated for that reason, but she says that everything will be fine. The next day Tokisada and Kusetsu take Ittoki to the location of his test. However, he would have to take the test alone and without help. The test would basically be a hide and seek at the service station, where some participants would have to hide and others search, being judged on creativity. The test would last 10 minutes. The one who is going to hide cannot be discovered, and the one who is going to look must find and be able to touch the person being looked for, being evaluated by cameras in the place where they will make sure that no participant violates the ninja rules. Ittoki is left in the role of hiding, but to make matters worse, the one who would be looking for him was Tsubaki, who was disguised with a wig. As if she wasn't enough, there were several others chasing him as well. But his uncle and Kusetsu help protect him, taking care not to be caught. But while they were busy with other ninjas, Ittoki is pursued by Tsubaki, who uses his clothes to camouflage himself. To remove his disguise, Ittoki uses a fire extinguisher, making it rain, and Kusetsu arrives just in time to protect him. However, his test was over and Ittoki unfortunately fails. He is questioned of his choice to fake a fire, since a ninja should avoid drawing attention. He explains that it was the way he was able to get people out of the place, making the place safe for civilians. Without the protection of the Ninja Academy, Ittoki would have to go to an isolated island of Iga. However, he receives news that the examiners have changed their minds and passed his test because a shinobi had to have both blade and heart, and Ittoki made it clear that he had heart by worrying about the safety of the civilians. Meanwhile, CNMSN 1st Division Captain Goshigawara questions Kito of Koga's actions, saying that in the test, besides Tsubaki, they arrested 4 other ninjas for violating the rules. However, Kito says he knew nothing about his actions, giving the excuse that everyone who was caught was missing as a way of getting rid of the blame. But Goshigawara says that Koga was acting suspiciously, and if any more violations occur in the village, they would have to take responsibility. As soon as he leaves the scene, Tsubaki is mysteriously eliminated. And so Ittoki leaves with Kusetsu for the Ninja Academy in Tokyo. As soon as he arrives, he meets a super cute girl named Ryoko from the Saiga village, making him get the feeling that it would be a fun life at the college. However, to his misfortune, he gets separated from Kusetsu and then bumps into the elite group from Koga Village High School, who obviously don't like him at all, especially the leader of the group, Suzaku. Luckily, Kurei, another student, sees him in that situation and helps by taking him away from the group. After talking for a while, the two decide to become friends. Afterwards, they go to a meeting of the principal, who explains the 3 principles of the ninjas: not to kill, not to betray, and not to be found out. In the cafeteria, Ittoki ends up looking at the table where the Koga were. They notice this, and Suzaku, realizing that Ittoki had no idea why they were angry, explains that the Iga eliminated their former leader Kishinmaru, the best ninja of the Koga, who was known for being a wonderful person and for trying to bring the villages together, and for this they vow to make the Iga pay. The next day, the students have their first class, where they would take a test to learn how to use the costumes and colors of ninjas. They will have to climb to the top of a mountain, where they will get manju as proof that they were able to climb to pass the test, but to do so they would have to be quick, as the principal was quietly eating the manju with his great appetite. When the test begins, everyone runs to the mountain, but Ittoki, who didn't even know about the costume until then, can't move because he doesn't understand how it works. Luckily, Ryoko appears and helps him by explaining how to move. She also explains that the core is the device on his wrist that powers the tools in his suit, and so he can't let it be damaged. Each village has distinct tools. While the two run to the test, the rest of the students were already picking up the manjas, including Kurei. But on the way back, she is surrounded by Koga students. Ittoki notices something wrong and asks Ryoko to continue alone, and finds Kurei injured with her core broken, plus having had her manju stolen. He then goes after Koga, who is already attacking his next victim. Ittoki asks them to return Kurei's manju, but ends up getting beaten up, until the director, who saw the event from above, intervenes. After the confusion, he goes to Kurei and gives her his manju, which he picked up during the fight against the Koga guy, while the smart guy who thought he would win by stealing from others realizes he had lost. After delivering Kurei to Ryoko, Ittoki finally goes to the test, arriving at the top of the mountain just in time to see the last manju left, but the director eats the last manju, making Ittoki fail the test. Meanwhile, Goshigawara holds a meeting to investigate the case of the elimination of the former leader of the Koga, in which the only evidence they had were the wounds on the murder weapon, which looked like the ones left by the swords of the Iga ninja, where the main suspect was Tokisada, who will be investigated by newcomer Shione. At school, the teacher announces that in 2 days they will have an exam on ninja tools. So Ittoki, all innocent, prepares to study, but discovers that the real test was who could use their ninja skills to steal the answers to the test that the teacher would hide somewhere. So they decide to work as a team to get the answers to the test while the Kogas do the same. Ittoki talks to Ryoko and finds out that she understands ninja tools well, as they are all made in her Saiga village, but her father, the village leader, wanted her to have an ordinary life and made her promise that after she graduates, she will completely get away from it all, even though she wants to take over the inheritance more than anything. Meanwhile, Tokisada meets with Ryoko's father Gantetsu. He explains that the Kogas asked for a project which he couldn't talk about due to client confidentiality, and that he didn't want to accept, but if he refused they would change their supplier to some overseas factory, threatening to bankrupt Saiga. Back at the college, the group thinks up a plan to steal the answers to the test, when 2 students offer to join the group. At night, while the group puts the plan into action, Tokisada breaks into Koga to find the project they asked Saiga for, while being followed by Shione, who is impressed by his ninja skills but then loses sight of him. Meanwhile, the teacher realizes that she had students trying to steal the answers to the test, and chases some of the group while others stay behind to get the answers. The next day, Ittoki and the group realize that although they made it, the answers don't match because Koga had switched the papers for them to get the wrong answers. In the end, only Ryoko does not do badly on the test since she was the only one who understood the ninja tools well. Because of this, they are penalized by having to perform heavy cleaning, and Kusetsu comes to the conclusion that there was a traitor in their group. Tokisada meets up with Gantetsu again and accidentally lets him know that Kido asked him to make the best core a few years ago. With this information, he suspects that Koga wants to discover the secret of the Iga core, which was so dangerous that it was deactivated and only the leaders knew its location, that is, only Yumika knew. Later, Goshigawara is informed that in Tsubaki's autopsy a microchip was found. At school, the teacher announces one more exam where they would have to steal someone's core, and as all exams so far were pretty normal, this one was common for about 2 students to be eliminated per year, something that seems common for the ninja world. Since Ittoki had already failed the 2 exams he had so far, if he lost this one he would risk being expelled, so his only option was to go to the exam, where he knew Suzaku and the others from Koga would take advantage of it to try to put an end to him. We see that in the past Suzaku was close to the former leader of the Koga Kishinmaru, and after his death he wished to continue his wish, a peaceful world where there would be no need for ninjas. Suzaku didn't quite understand this wish, but after his loss he understands that when you know pain, you don't think about hurting other people. Nevertheless, he wished to eliminate Ittoki. Meanwhile, the group was ready to come up with a plan for the test, but with the risk of having a traitor among them, Ittoki decides that he will work only with Kusetsu this time. But Ryoko decides to help by giving him a disguise mask. Later, after his mother certifies that he was still alive, Ittoki meets with the director. The two talk and Ittoki asks if eliminating was being a ninja, and he replies that a completely peaceful world was a fantasy, and ninjas did the dirty work in the shadows to protect that fantasy. He explains that 2 students asked him the same question, Kishinmaru, the former leader of the Koga, and his father. Both of them replied that they wanted no part of this dirty work. The next day, Ittoki meets with Kusetsu to work out a plan where he would steal some core, and run off to find somewhere to hide for the rest of the trial, while she would go after Suzaku to finish him off. After they mark an initial ambush on the map, they throw it in the trash and someone finds it. Next we see Suzaku and the group planning to eliminate Ittoki. So the next day the ordeal begins, and as planned Ittoki goes to the initial ambush point. However, he already knew the Koga were headed there and fires an air bomb that brings them all down. They knew that the traitor, one of the boys who asked to join the group, would find the part and lure a good number of the Koga. The traitor apologizes for what he has done, explaining that they had threatened to wipe out his village if he disobeyed. Thereafter they continue with their plan. While Kaotsetsu goes after Suzaku, Ittoki uses his disguise mask to attack one of the Koga members to take his core and pass the test. However, to his surprise, he was not the only one with this kind of mask. The Koga guy reveals himself to be Suzaku, while the one with Kusetsu was someone else. Several Koga attack her, but since she was very skilled, they decide to sacrifice themselves to defeat her and blow up the place. Meanwhile, Ittoki runs for his life, running away from the wrath of Suzaku, who says he must eliminate him so that Iga would know what pain was and never hurt anyone again. After a while of running away, Ittoki manages to destroy Suzaku's core and says that although he doesn't like him, he didn't want him to become an assassin, and then faints. Although Suzaku could put an end to him, at that moment he does nothing. Meanwhile, Tokisada continues to investigate Koga and is shown to have known about Shione all along, though he doesn't seem to mind her presence. Later, Ittoki wakes up in the infirmary and sees his friends there with him, discovering that Kusetsu was fine. In the same place, some members of Koga who suffered from the explosion were injured and complained to Suzaku for risking themselves for nothing. Later, Suzaku meets with Kure and we find out that she was another spy of his. She is a Fuma ninja who was taught by her father, the leader, that she must do anything, cheat, steal, and even eliminate for the good of her village. During the summer vacations, Kure and Ryoko go to Iga village to stay with Ittoki and Kusetsu because of an accident that occurred at Ryoko's father's factory, which, even though he knew it was caused by Saiga members, he would now be forced to accept their request for the Saiga not to go bankrupt. Ryoko was there at her father's request as a form of protection, but Kure went along with an excuse to spy on the Iga village and send information to Suzaku via a bird. Meanwhile, Goshigawara holds another meeting where Shione reports what she discovered following Tokisada, and says that besides all the suspicious things from Koga, there was still the rumor that they were planning to attack Iga, and that's why they should be investigating Koga. But Goshigawara doesn't even consider the idea and asks her to continue investigating Tokisada. Later, Ittoki finds out more about his father. He died on a mission with his uncle, who blamed himself for what happened. Yumika also tells him that as a leader she sent many to dangerous missions, including that of her friend Raya's husband, who was until today in a coma because of it. The next day, the anniversary of her father's death, where everyone in the village always paid homage to him, Ittoki together with his friends go fishing to help prepare the ceremony. After some time fishing, Ittoki talks to Kure, who, remembering her tough childhood with her father, who taught her to lie above all things. She ends up lying about herself and her village. Ittoki believes every word of it and even thanks her for having supported him when he arrived at school, explaining that he didn't know anything about the ninja world and didn't even want to be one. But thanks to her help everything became easier, which leaves her with a bit of a guilty conscience. Afterwards everyone gathers to do a memorial for Ittoki's father, and there he finds out that after his death, the ego was divided with so much anger over the loss. Yumika, who wasn't even a ninja, was the one who brought them back together, and so everyone loved her and felt they owed her some debt, like Kusetsu, who was abandoned and taken in as a daughter by Yumika. Ittoki is happy to realize how he belonged to a united village full of good people. Meanwhile, Kirei goes to Suzaku, who just had another peaceful day in Iga. Later Shione meets with the captain of the 2nd Division Kurajishi, who ends up asking if she didn't find Goshigawara's attitude suspicious, while he asks her to summon the Grand Ninja Council. In the meantime, Yumika tells Ittoki about the secret Iga Corps and shows him the Iga Ninja Registry, explaining that once his name was there, he would officially be an Iga ninja. They then discover that Goshigawara has convened the Great Ninja Council, where only the leaders of each village would go, deciding the future of Japan's ninja. Shione questions Goshigawara for not talking to anyone about his decision, but he replies that she should just focus on her work. Yumika along with Tokisada and Kozo go to the meeting where they meet all the other leaders of the other villages, except for Saiga, the one who could defend Iga. Kido explains that Saiga is now with Koga thanks to a mutual agreement that whatever is discussed at the meeting, Saiga will agree with Koga. Goshigawara starts the meeting by saying that the balance they had built was being threatened by Koga. He says that several small villages suddenly disappeared just like Saiga, without even having a record of this mutual agreement. Then he asks the leaders to manifest if he suffered anything from Koga that violated the regulations. Shione and his companions observe the meeting without understanding why Goshigawara hid that he was investigating Koga, but one of them says that Koga could have some influence even among them. They all deny knowing anything until Yumika shows them the evidence Tokisada acquired, proving that Koga was manufacturing a powerful weapon as well as being after Iga's core. She speaks that in response to this they would destroy the core to ensure that it is not used in the wrong hands. With that, the Bizan village representative comes forward confessing to having suffered with Koga. This makes everyone else have the courage to admit that they were also going through similar situations, gathering enough evidence to arrest Kido, who should take responsibility as Koga's leader. At that moment Kurajishi appears saying that he has proof that Iga eliminated Koga's former leader. Everyone is surprised and he presents a video which had a very sort of picture, but assuring that the sound obtained in the footage was from an Iga tool. Everyone finds that suspicious, but Goshigawara had no choice but to hold Yumika until he had a more concrete answer. And so she and Kido are arrested. Later Goshigawara goes into a room to investigate the video of the elimination of Koga's leader, realizing that there was something wrong. But before he could find out the truth, he is attacked by Kurajishi. Meanwhile Iga becomes desperate, not knowing what to do with her imprisoned leader, and Ittoki takes the lead, making it clear that it was only until his mother returns. However, Kurajishi sentences Yumika to death. Kido on the other hand is released and announces the preparation for war with Iga. To make matters worse, Kurajishi takes over the leadership of CNMSN, thanks to Goshigawara's disappearance. The first thing he announces is to remove the team that worked with him from the investigations except for Shione, who goes from rookie to captain of the division. They meet and Shione says she finds the whole thing very suspicious, as if Kurajishi put her in just because he knew she wasn't experienced enough, and suspects him of having something to do with Goshigawara's disappearance. Meanwhile Kurajishi offers Yumika her freedom in exchange for Iga's core. Obviously she denies it and her sentence is set. When Iga discovers Yumika's death sentence, everyone becomes desperate. Ittoki as the new leader had to decide what to do. His uncle suggests that he kick him out of the village to go rescue her without having ties to Iga. Kusetsu feigns a threat by asking to be kicked out as well, since her only family was Yumika. However, Ittoki asks them to go rescue Yumika as Iga's ninjas, as they had done nothing wrong, so they had nothing to fear. However, Kirei hears the plan and Suzaku immediately warns Kido about the rescue Iga has planned, saying that without Tokisada's presence, their best ninja Iga would be vulnerable, and asks him to go along in the attack. Kido agrees, and his father does not like the idea and tries to remind his son of the desire he had to continue with Kishinmaru's dream of peace, but he was already decided to take part in the war. As Koga was about to invade Iga with an army of robots, Kido holds a meeting where Housen, Suzaku's father, says that he didn't think the invasion was a good idea for Koga's own sake. However, Kido silences him with a shot. So the Iga village discovers they have a fake disaster in the area, as a way for Koga to isolate the whole place to attack. They prepare for war while Tokisada and Kusetsu rescue Yumika. However, on the way out they are surrounded by Kurajishi. With no other option, Tokisada stays behind while Kusetsu escapes with Yumika. Meanwhile, Suzaku prepares to invade Iga when he discovers that his father has been eliminated by Kido. When the war begins, Iga tries to hold off the Koga attack. However, they were outnumbered, being mostly robots. Therefore Ittoki finds it strange because they were attacking with a lot of caution for those who had the advantage. Ryoko then asks for a sample of one of the robots. After analyzing a sample, she discovers that the robots are really strong, but they consume so much energy that lasts only 1 hour. With this, they understand that probably the robots were recharging the battery somewhere in the forest. So Ittoki, being the leader, feels obligated to go destroy the battery because without it, the robots would soon discharge. As Ryoko understood the subject, she asks to go along, explaining that they were being attacked by a creation of her father. Unlike her, Kirei asks to stay behind, giving the excuse that he would not help on the mission. As soon as they leave, she writes to warn Suzaku about the plan, but is in doubt whether or not she would betray her friends. Meanwhile, Tokisada resists CNMSN's attacks until Shione shows up and has Kurajishi arrested. She explains that they found ninjas from Koga trying to burn Goshigawara's body and he was the prime suspect. So he is arrested and Tokisada quietly walks past her. While Tokisada along with Yumika and Kusetsu arrived in Iga, Ittoki and Ryoko arrive at the robot battery site. They throw a powder that paralyzes the robots for a while for Ittoki to put a bomb on the battery, which would destroy not only it, but the robots that were near. However, a Koga ninja appears and disrupts the plan. But one of the robots helps Ittoki and picks up the bomb, putting the battery and explodes everything. It was Kair who decided to make the right choice and help his friends. Without the battery to recharge the robots, Koga decides to retreat. All ends well until Kurajishi, who was trapped, starts controlling Kusetsu somehow and makes her take Yumika hostage to get the core. Yumika tries to get Kusetsu to take control and she struggles to get it. But unfortunately, when Ittoki arrives, he sees his mother knocked out on the ground. We see that the other villages as well as Iga were also attacked by the robots, while Saiga's factory suffered an explosion. Already in Iga, Ittoki was having to deal with the loss of his mother and the pressure of having to assume his responsibility as leader, while everyone was angry and wanting to attack Koga and asking for Kusetsu to be penalized with death. But Ittoki, who could only think of his mother, asked them to at least wait for her funeral before making any decision. Back in Koga, Kido plans a new attack on Iga while Suzaku meets with the ninja who told him about his father's death. He explains that Kido was endangering even his own village and would eliminate anyone who opposed him, and advises Suzaku to stay hidden. Later, Shione shows up to see Tokisada. He thinks she came to capture him, but she says that the priority was to arrest Koga and that Kurajishi was in jail, and who took his place was the academy director. She explains that they researched Kurajishi's connection to Koga and found connection to a ninja from Iga, Kusetsu. After that, Ittoki says goodbye to Kirei and Ryoko, who are going back to their villages, and we see that Kirei had a guilty conscience for what she did. After they say goodbye, Tokisada takes him to see Kusetsu, who was completely tied up so she wouldn't self-destruct. She explains that a bell rang in her head and after that she only had fragments of memories, and when she woke up Yumika had already died. She cries begging to be eliminated and Tokisada explains that she had a microchip in her head, just as she had one in Tsubaki, the ninja who tried to eliminate Ittoki. He explains that Kido had several daughters with lovers and after putting microchips in all of them, he scattered them in different villages creating unconscious spies, and one of the daughters was Kusetsu. She questions how Tokisada didn't know she was related to Kido and he explains that he did, but Yumika didn't care and wanted to raise her as her daughter regardless of who she was related to. Even realizing that she was controlled, Kusetsu continues to blame herself. However, Tokisada says that he trained her and knew well that she wouldn't have made a wound like the one made on Yumika, meaning Iga had a traitor. Meanwhile, Kido gets the call from the traitor. He explains that he realized that Yumika wasn't going to give away the location of the core and Kusetsu had resisted control, so he decided to put an end to Yumika and now Ittoki took over, but wasn't being able to lead, being a perfect time for Kido to attack. In Fuma village, Kirei finally gets home and finds out that his father has been betrayed by Koga. As a way to save her, he throws her away just in time for the place to explode. In the meantime, Ryoko meets her father and finds out that he lost his arm to serve as an example at the factory that they were made slaves to Koga. In Iga, after Yumika's funeral, Ittoki says goodbye when he receives a visit from Suzaku. He shows that he has come to give his feelings, but at the same time calls Ittoki a coward. This makes him angry. He knocks Suzaku down and asks what all that was for. Suzaku explains that Koga won't stop until all the villages bow down to them, and says that his father was eliminated for being against it, so he had no choice but to fight. At home, Suzaku looks at a portrait of his father when he notices something behind him. A video recording, the death of Kishinmaru, his beloved leader who was eliminated by Kido, who tells him he intends to exterminate all ninjas. Kido was born sick and had to undergo several treatments to become Koga's leader, making him feel a lot of pain and wish ninjas did not exist. At night, Ittoki talks to his mother and finally makes a decision, asking his uncle's support to follow the plan. The next day he gathers the whole village to tell them that he has decided to hand over the core to Koga in exchange for Iga's autonomy. Everyone does not accept the decision and shows their displeasure. Then Ittoki says that if they do not agree they could leave the village. Meanwhile the director also holds a meeting saying that they would reconcile with Koga, which leaves Shione confused. He explains that they don't have enough evidence to incriminate Koga other than Iga's attack. However, since Iga stated that he wouldn't press charges asking for the peace agreement, they had nothing to do. Meantime, Kido plans to delay the response of the agreement and take the core first so as to attack Iga. In Saiga, Kirei goes to see Ryoko. Despite everything being destroyed and her being the only ninja in the place, she wouldn't stop working, as ninja tools were something that couldn't stop being made. Kirei praises her friend's strength, saying that now that her father died, she was finally free of her village, which survived by giving information to Koga. She explains that she gave information for Iga to be attacked and because of her Yumiko was eliminated. She cries, saying that all she did was betray and hurt her friends, but Ryoko shows that she forgives Kirei for everything. At Koga, Kido receives a call from Suzaku telling that he found the video that showed that he eliminated his former leader, and says that he would like to give it to him. When the ninjas arrive to get the video, Suzaku knocks them all down and finds out that the new attack in Iga would be the next day. Meanwhile, Iga asks Ittoki to give up the leadership, but he denies the request, saying again that if they weren't wanting to follow him they could leave. The next day Kirei goes to apologize to Ittoki, but as he wasn't in, she gives the message to Tokisada, who shows that she knew of her betrayal, but reassures the girl, saying that she wasn't responsible for Yumika's elimination as there was another traitor inside the village, and as she helped them win in the attack they were even. Meanwhile, Iga, ordered by Kozo, plans to steal the secret core to stop Ittoki from handing it over to Koga. Kozo says that while he goes to get the core, the others would keep watch. Later the traitor calls Kido to warn of the plan and he orders him to steal the core before Kozo does. So Kozo goes into the room where the core was and discovers that Iga's traitor was Raya. In fact, this was all a plan by Ittoki, who pretended to hand over the core to Koga to turn Iga against him. He trusted Kozo to ask him to give the fake move as a way for them to find out Iga's traitor, because only then, they would be free to focus on Koga. She explains that all Iga did was send her husband on a dangerous mission that left him in a coma, and Kido already promised that she could save him. Kozo then sees a letter from Ittoki. It starts with him apologizing for lying to everyone and tells them his real plan. He explains that Tokisada found out the truth about Kido, so he would use the moment they attack Iga to invade Koga and negotiate with Kido. He asks that when that moment comes they should flee, because as long as they were alive, Iga would be too. They regret for having doubted Ittoki and decide that they will not run away, because by fighting they will be able to hold on to most of Koga's strength, so that Ittoki can face Kido. Meanwhile, he, along with Tokisada and Kusetsu, who managed to destroy his microchip, were already on their way to Koga. So while Iga was suffering the second attack, the trio invades Koga village when they receive more help, Ryoko and Kirei. Then with their help, the three manage to get past the ninjas and climb to the floor of Kido's room, where Ittoki fights using the secret core. There Tokisada stays behind to fight with Suzaku's help. And so Ittoki and Kusetsu arrive in Kido's room. Ittoki says that he came only to understand why he wanted to exterminate all the ninjas. However, Kido replies that he didn't have a good reason and asks Ittoki to face him with his core. Ittoki replies that that was the function of the CNMSNs. He asks Shione to leave Koga alone until he makes Koga confess his crimes, as a way to have enough evidence against them. But Kido confronts Ittoki and the two start fighting. However, Ittoki manages to defeat him, but when he goes to see if Kusetsu had been injured, Kido takes the opportunity to try to shoot them and Tokisada appears, putting an end to Kido. As this was a CNMSN function, he is forced to flee as a fugitive. After a while all was at peace again. Kozo tells Shione that he believes Tokisada was still protecting them through the shadows like a real ninja. While Ryoko finally realized her dream of taking over Saiga's factory, while Kirei decided to become an actress to use her ability to lie to entertain people, Koga was taken over by Suzaku and Iga continued to be led by Ittoki, who felt more and more like a real ninja. Hit the like button below and I'll see you in the next one.